Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. My ex husband, Adam, and I were married for about 10 years because he passed away due to health related issues. Devastated would be an understatement, as my daughter Olivia and I both suffered through depression due to this loss. But with the help of a lot of therapy, we were able to get better. After 2 years of Adam's death, I met Robert, who was Adam's family friend. We first met at a family gathering. The reason why we'd never met before was due to the fact that he had been living in Europe all along and had only returned recently due to a work transfer. Well, the day we met, Robert and I hit it off instantly. We connected immediately, and it was like I found a sense of youth in myself when I was with him because of how free spirited he was, and so we started hanging out more and more. Initially as friends. Well, Robert too had a son back in Europe and a wife who was under the process of divorcing due to her infidelity, so losing partners was a topic related to us both and something that got us closer. Olivia didn't like Robert from the get go, under the context that he gave her a bad vibe, and man, things would have been way different now that if I would have listened to her a little more, but well, I didn't, and that is what brought me here. So Olivia and Robert already have this rocky relationship as we're friends, and it only worsens as we tell her that we're dating after about a year of going out together. Olivia was infuriated at this news, so much so that she locked herself into her room, refusing to get out for days on end. After eventually coming out and telling me that she was okay with our relationship as long as Robert didn't try to replace Adam, which he had never done to begin with. Robert and I continued to date while I and Olivia start therapy together to help her to come around all of this, which she eventually did. After 2 years of dating, Robert and I decide to tie the knot. Now, the second red flag over here would be of how literally no one from his side of the family or friends showed up at our wedding, and his reasoning behind it was how they were all on his ex wife's side. That explanation was convincing enough for me, like a fool in love, and we got married. Well, after about 6 months of our marriage, Robert loses his job, claiming that he was forced to resign for not accepting a promotion. Having worked in a similar field as him before, it made sense to me why he had done that because I had done something similar too a couple of years back. But once again, all of this was yet another part of his master plan. So he's now jobless, trying to apply for another job, and boy, does he seem to be dedicated. After giving interview after interview, nothing comes out. And by looking at his resume, it is shocking, but I let him be. At this point, I had already taken over the household expenses. So eventually, after a couple of months of this fake job hunting, Robert introduces me to his friend Ryan. They both sit me down and explain me their business idea, and honestly, I was quite impressed by it. I tell them to go for it, and little would you all know, the only reason why I was approached at the first place was to support their business idea financially for a partial ownership in it. I told them I needed some time to think because it was quite a bit of money. Needless to say, I fell for the trap, and after doing the math, if the statistics provided to me by the two, I would be able to make her trust fund double the amount it was. So even though what I did was selfish and stupid, I feel like it was at the end out for the need for security for my daughter. So I ended up first transferring a bit of my daughter's inheritance to Robert. His behavior immediately started becoming suspicious. He started staying home more, playing video games and eating junk food rather than working on his business idea. It took me a whopping month to come up with the courage to sit him down and ask him about the business idea. And that is when a huge argument broke between us, leading to him leaving the house and eventually returning to apologize to me because I had brought him back to his path. Ever since then, he had been going to work every single day. I was happy about this because this man went as far as to update me every once in a while about the business, and honestly, I wouldn't have known what was happening unless I came across this. You see, I was cleaning the house one day. It is about holiday season, so cleaning season came along with it. So while deep cleaning, I came across a stash of papers. Thinking it was some sort of electricity bill, I decided to look into them, and boy, I was dumbfounded as I sat there reading records after records of Robert's bank transactions. It consisted of statements after statements of him spending much on everything that wasn't business related, from food, games, gambling, alcohol, to everything. It also had some international transactions too back in Europe, back in his home country. I immediately took pictures of the statements and put them away. I know I need to confront Robert as well as to go to the lawyers ASAP. I have already booked an appointment at the lawyers who I will be seeing tomorrow, but I'm so shocked at everything that I have become completely blank. What should I tell him? Do I even have a leg to stand on? What should I do? AITA? I saw the lawyers today and explained to him the situation in great detail. I submitted all the proof that I collected from the agreement that we signed as well as the bank statements. We talked for a couple of hours about the situation, and he told me that I could file a lawsuit against him for fraud. I also talked to him about divorce, and he told me that if I could possibly get proof about his infidelity, if there was any. Apparently, it will make my case stronger and give him more time in jail. Well, by looking at his transactions to Europe, I had my doubts. So when Robert went to work, I decided to snoop through his gaming computer where I found his secret email account full of exchanges between him and his alleged cheating ex wife, talking about everything ranging from their son, life in general, work and hell, even sexual stuff. Disgust would be an understatement. I felt sick to my stomach, but I knew I had to get to work. I immediately took screenshots of their exchanges and saved his ex's email. I will be submitting this information to the lawyers soon as well. But my question to you all is, should I email the wife? By their exchanges, she seems as clueless as I was, thinking that her husband is truly innocent and working hard back in America. So, what should I do? After reading all of your replies, I decided to email the wife, explaining everything from the beginning to the end. She was as shocked as me and even went as far as showing a bit of a suspicion, so she decided to give me her number and call. I heard everything in detail, sent her pictures of us together, and finally she was convinced and infuriated and told me she would do anything that would take to put him in jail. So we set up a conference call between the lawyer, I, and her, where we discussed about her becoming an evidence when it came to proving the infidelity. So now that everything is in place, I will serve Robert soon. We'll update you all later. I posted on this Reddit a while talking about my ex husband. Not sure if any of you all remember, but it was about me talking about how my ex husband had scammed me out of money for his alleged business idea, which was a lie because he was using the money to send it back to his family back in Europe. Well, I wasn't able to update because all broke loose the day I served him the lawsuit along with the divorce papers. He got angry immediately and started breaking things around my house. It scared me and Olivia, but thankfully, we were able to call in the cops just in time that he didn't do anything to us. This was the reason why I hadn't updated the post either, because the cops had told us to not talk about this situation anywhere until the results of the case came out. Well, they just did, with the overwhelming amount of evidence against Robert. He was put in jail. He is looking to face jail time for a couple of years at minimum, alongside facing fines. As for his business partner, Ryan, he ended up acting as a piece of evidence for protection, once again putting Robert at a disadvantage. Calling it a hell of a ride would be an understatement, as facing every court date was nerve wracking as well as relieving because it meant that we were closer to the truth. Now that I've reached the light outside the tunnel, it's like me and Olivia are once again at square one with therapy. She doesn't know the full extent of the situation because I never gave her the exposure to it, but the divorce has impacted her quite a bit. As for her trust fund, I have sold one of my properties to make sure that it was back to the amount that her dad had left it for her. If I ever see any of that money back, it will go to her trust fund. I know I haven't been the best mother through this, I really do, and I know fixing everything doesn't make me one either. I know I have a long way to go, and I want to thank you all for making me realize the same. NTA for wanting to sue him, but you're the major a-hole for using your daughter's trust fund, which I assume was left by your ex-husband for your new partner. You better start working on bringing the trust fund back to where it was. Otherwise, don't be surprised if your daughter resents you forever. NTA, but goddamn, you've got to be completely manipulated by this man for believing even an inch of him. Please run, not walk, to the lawyers if you even want to see a little bit of that money back. I am 4 years older than my brother Mark. I never got myself into trouble and was always a great student. I graduated and found myself a great job, a loving wife, and all I've dreamed of. Mark is doing good, all things considered, but he sure went the long way. When he got to high school, he would constantly hang with the wrong crowds and got himself in trouble very often. He barely graduated, and after that, his life went off the deep end. He flunked college, only got himself dead end jobs, and only got by with mine and mother's help. He also got himself into drugs, though I don't know how bad. Still, all things considered, he was always a very good person. Honest, and he never made excuses for himself. He was just lazy and had no direction in life. During this time, he was our extended family's black sheep, especially from our mother's side. Our Aunt Mary, especially. Mary is very cool, but does act a bit pretentious. Her kids worshipped Mark, and when the stories about his life started going around, half of them were lies, she started putting some distance, but would talk to Mark the same as me when we did meet. Eventually, Mark turned his life around. I don't know what happened, but I know it was really bad. Long story short, he got himself clean. 1 year after that, he was unrecognizable. He was happy, extroverted, and pretty much left his old life behind. After 8 years, he was engaged with a job and a future. Our family knows of this and they're happy for him. Unfortunately, Mary never abandoned her old views. She occasionally puts him down because he never went to college and doesn't respect his job. Every time I visit, she likes to show me off as her lawyer nephew, but she never invites him or even mentions him. As far as her friends know, my mother only has one son. Mark knows this, and it hurts him. 2 years ago, Mary's daughter got married and they planned this huge wedding. Both me, my wife, and my mother got invited, but not Mark. We didn't know how to handle this. We asked Mary's daughter why Mark was left out, and she admitted her mother didn't want him there because it would make them look bad. We decided to go without telling him so he wouldn't get hurt. He was never even aware Mary's daughter was getting married. Of course, eventually he found out when he saw pictures on social media. He was absolutely crushed. He confronted us and said that if we were family, we should have refused to go without him. I disagreed. We fought, and he went NC. To this day, my mother feels guilty about it. This was 2 years ago. A couple of weeks ago, my mother found out that Mark just had a kid and had introduced it to our other uncles. She was very hurt, since she never even knew his partner was pregnant. She asked him why he didn't tell us about this child. His answer: I love, son. I will always be there for him, no matter what. I will not expose him to a family that will feel ashamed of him and turn him into a pariah because of some stupid choices. YTA, absolutely. You demonstrated a lack of empathy for your brother, a lack of intelligence to realize this would cause a problem, and a lack of courage to do the right thing. I don't know what field of law you practice, but with those qualities, I would never hire you to represent me in court. Your brother is hurt. I don't blame him. Now, because no one in his family spoke up for him, you all are going to have to walk this out. To add insult to injury, his own family didn't have the personal courage to tell him, and he found out on social media. Then you wonder why he doesn't want to be bothered with you all. He turned his life around. Mary is judgmental, and everyone folds like a wet paper napkin for her. SMH. If my son wasn't invited to a wedding because of something so lame, I wouldn't go, period. YTA, and so is your mother. YTA, along with everything else, think about this. You found it justified that Mary's daughter stood in solidarity with Mary's demand to exclude Mark. OP made it sound like Mary's daughter did not have an issue with Mark. Even this glaringly offensive solidarity did not make you think that perhaps, just like her, you should also stand by your brother, and not with a relative who values images more than actual connections. I'm divorced and remarried. We had two sons who are currently 26 and 21. My wife also has a daughter who is 21. With my current wife, I have one son, 15. My ex and I were paycheck to paycheck when our kids were little, especially our oldest. When we managed to establish ourselves professionally, we were able to do more, but they both remembered what it was like to not have a lot. My stepdaughter is also very cognizant of cost and appreciative of things. Because my wife and I are both doing very well, we have been able to give our son a lot. I'm talking about expensive game systems, software, telescope, binoculars, high end cameras, expensive trips, a fancy bike, and it just goes on and on. My oldest son was over last night and telling a story that involved Christine. My youngest asked who Christine was. My oldest explained that she was his first car, an old junker. My youngest asked questions about the car and then wondered why my oldest wanted to drive something so old and goofy. I know he didn't mean anything by it, but I decided he needed a reality check. I told my youngest son that the Beta was all we could afford at the time. Youngest then said, "Well, you're getting me something new next year, right, Dad?" I admonished him, saying that he was acting spoiled and rubbing in his brother's face that he basically won the birth order lottery. Youngest was upset by that comment and went to his room to sulk. My oldest said I was too hard on him, and my wife is pissed. I just think he needs to learn to be more considerate of others. Is spoiled really such a nasty word? YTA, you spoil the kid by buying him all the stuff his siblings couldn't have, and then expect him to not assume he will get a better car? You've created this monster by giving him everything he wants compared to the other siblings. In many families, the income of our parents increasing doesn't mean the youngest gets spoiled. There were a lot of other things you could have done with that money other than buy him toys. We all had to have jobs and learn to work part time no matter how much our parents made. YTA, because you're the one who spoiled him. Buying him a junker to teach him a lesson isn't going to do much because you already bought him everything he wanted for the last decade. The only lesson is that you have the power to play mind games. Also, your oldest son is only 11 years older than your youngest. So your younger kid was already 5 by the time Christine came into the picture. When did you start having enough money to buy It Just Goes On and On? Did you start buying your older kids fancy things as well at the time? Or, nope, they already have some cheap stuff. Let me just spend all my money on kid with a better wife. If you want to teach your son, actually teach him. Teach him how to budget, how to save money, etc. Encourage him to get a part time job, have responsibilities around the home, etc. And you don't have to buy him every single thing he wants, but you don't have to get him a junker just to prove a point. Over time, those cars often need a lot poured into them to keep them running and safe. YTA, if you feel like your child is spoiled or entitled, that's because they have come to have expectations based upon your past behavior. Parenting isn't easy, but your child's view on money and possessions can be shaped by you and your behaviors. From your post, it seems like he's mostly only been exposed to your success and may not have connected the hard work or rough start it may have taken you to get there. My hope would be that he realizes or is shown how fortunate he is. Sometimes experience is the best teacher, and working with one's own two hands to earn something makes that item much more valuable to the owner.